Good morning or evening, depending on where you are. Welcome to our Hacking HR panel discussion today on remote, flexible and inclusive, how to adapt work policies in the new world of work. I'm Rod Hutchings, your moderator. I'm working remotely in Bangkok, Thailand. I'm normally based in Melbourne, Australia. So today we're fortunate to have some great panels to share this conversation with. And as we navigate the discussion, we'll hopefully share some practical strategies and insights that can really help you become more adaptable, flexible, and inclusive in your organizations and for yourself. So can we bring our panelists forward, please?
Hi, everyone.
Hey, so thanks for joining. And yeah, I'm really excited about the conversation we're going to have today. So would you just like to introduce yourself, what brings you to this topic, and maybe how your organisation's responded to the shift to remote and flexible arrangements, and maybe some of the challenges as well on that journey, just to get us just started on this. So we'll just go from top down to and around, so clockwise. So Kristen is first.
All right. Thank you very much. I am also working remotely. I'm usually based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but I'm in Charleston, South Carolina right now. So again, just demonstrating the flexibility that we tend to have. I'm a people and culture director with Manpower Group and work with a global team and really supporting some of their corporate functions. And so our teams are spread all over the world. So some of what we see in the challenges for this type of work is time zone challenges, which I think we're all kind of maybe even experiencing right now, but also the challenge for bringing people on board in a really meaningful way and connecting them to the organization when they might not have a physical place to go or a physical presence to kind of latch onto. So that's kind of some of the challenges. We really work hard to ensure that people are able to work in an office if that's what they choose, that they have the ability to work at home if that's what they choose. We like people to be in the office a few days a week if that's possible. So again, trying to maintain that flexibility, I think, is our biggest benefit, but also I think part of our biggest challenge.
Thank you. What a great introduction. And now we'll go across to the top right.
Hello, everyone. My name is Khalil Zafar. I'm a Dubai-based management and HR consultant, author of the book Future of Work Simplified. I'm particularly interested in the future of work, especially in the areas when it comes to AI and the impact of having remote work. So whatever you want to call it, working from home, the gig economy, the freelance world, or whatever it is. I think my main input would be from a cultural diversity perspective. Having worked across South Asia, in the Middle East, and in Canada, I have a good understanding of how different geographic regions operate and what are the challenges when it comes to the cultural elements.
No, and that's really interesting. Like, again, like we've got quite a diverse group here of where we're based, I think, as well, we including yourself, which will really bring some extra perspectives to the conversation, I think. And so now we'll go down the bottom on the right. And so I think you just joined. So we're just introducing ourselves and just sharing how your organizations responded to the shift to remote and flexible work and some of the challenges you might have faced in that as you introduce yourself. So,
Sandhya, I think it's you next, right?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, happy to do that. Hi, Manisha. Hi, Khalil. Hi, Christian. And hi, Rod. Thanks so much. This is really lovely. Like you rightly said, Rod, all of us are sitting in different time zones and different areas and locations. So it's like just past midnight here in Hong Kong, which is where I'm currently based. But like all our work takes us across the world. So in some ways, the time zones matter and don't matter to some extent. Hopefully, there's some bit of flexibility in terms of sleeping in a bit in the morning for some of us then. I'm an organizational consultant and a business storytelling coach. So my big, hairy, audacious goal is to really help leaders and teams be more human at work and drive business outcomes through the power of storytelling. And for me, what it really meant, working remote and flexible, which is how I feel my life has always been. I worked in India, I worked in the Middle East, specifically Bahrain and Dubai, and then been in Hong Kong. I turned major in Hong Kong this year, 18. But feels like, obviously work is not where you go, but it's what you do truly for all of us and for organizations as well. And that's what I see my clients doing as well today. A lot of the conversations at one point of time might have started saying, oh, so where are you based? Can you come and do an in-person session or something like that? But now the conversation comes to that much later. It's like trying to figure out what are the skills, what are the competencies, what are the areas of work. And then the conversation goes to, are we looking at online, offline? Where are the teams dialing in from and so on? So really seeing that remote flexible work greatly for the clients and for me as well. So I'm looking forward to hearing from everybody what's happening around the world.
Thank you. And last but not least,
Manisha. Thanks, Rod. And nice to meet you again, Sondri. Sondri and I know each other from another world, so it was a great coincidence to see each other's face in the same panels. And very nice to meet Kristen and Kali as well. I am dialing in from California, so it's bright morning and sunny outside. Early morning, I guess after morning. So I currently lead people intelligence or people analytics products for Oracle, more in the technology side. Was a business leader, entered the space of people intelligence or people insights as a consumer who did not have the answers about 11 years back, right? So we had FP&A dashboards, we had operational dashboards. There was no insights on individuals. It was difficult and I'm a people-centric person. So not staying in touch with what's happening with teams, especially once you pass like close to 100 people in your organization range, you need some insights, right? You brain stops working, and like remembering everything yourself. So I called my HR VP, asked him for a solution, and he said, well, you're the technology person, go figure it out, right? So here I am now leading people analytics for Oracle. But I will say, I think just resonating back to what has been said already, work, there are reasons for us to come back to work. I think chemistry is better built when you are meeting with each other. A lot of the times, just mingling with each other, maybe even having lunches and dinners together. Whiteboarding is easier when you are in person, but a lot of the work can also be done remotely, especially desk work, right? I need my think time to do my work. So I think there's a good balance that is needed for each, but the way the world used to work earlier, everybody comes in 9 to 5, sits together, even a Zoom with remote people. Maybe we don't need to go back to that, but maybe we do need to find the new balance where can you meet once a quarter and make sure everybody comes in and just connects with each other, shouts at each other if you need to be, because there's a conflict rising up, and then, build some trust, go back, do your work. So there is a balance to be acquired. It will likely depend on each industry. It will likely depend on each geography. And the ownership is a lot on the leaders of these organizations to find the right balance. That's the way I look at it. Oracle specifically is very flexible. We are asking people to come back to work, but we are also pretty flexible in terms of do what needs to be done the right way, right? So, and every team has some flexibility into what they believe is the right thing for their organization. As long as the teams are growing and the product and the business is growing, I think our leaders have the flexibility to find what the right balance for them is. I'll leave it there and we'll come back.
Well, that was a great introduction and welcome. And yeah, we've got such great, rich panelists here that's going to really contribute to this. And one more, Shay, and what we're covering is just introducing yourself and share how your organisation just briefly has responded to the shift to remote and flexible work, and what are some of the challenges you've faced in that sort of transition. as you introduce yourself. So over to
Well,
you.
hello. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much, Rod, for allowing me to share a bit of information. So, Shay Green, I am the head of HR for a software tech company, and we started out as remote. We have a small office, so we've had to adapt and didn't have to reframe remote work. However, I will say that we are continuing to develop the policies, the practices, and the strategies to ensure that we are engaging our folks appropriately and effectively. So we didn't have the issue of office to remote. We started out that way, but it's still a challenge either way.
Well, yeah, so that's really interesting too then. So we've got quite a diversity of different experiences with remote work. So it should be good as we get into this. So to get us moving on, so I just wanted to ask, what's the role in leadership in setting the right tone to make remote work inclusive? So what do we think about that? What's the leadership's role in that? Who'd like to set us off on that?
Should I have a go at it?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I think you put the most difficult question up front. So
sorry about that.
So it's quite a technical thing as well as challenging, but I think there are two sides to it. When this pandemic came 2020, it expedited a lot of things, and I think it accelerated what the management consultants and the futurists have been saying for the past 10 or 15 years about the remote work, the diversity, and the impact of technology. The problem was we didn't have any sort of a manual or a guidebook or standards available when it comes to remote working and the type of the psychology that needs to be set for the employees. So it was all trial and error, what works best for the organization, and then coming up with a solution. But on the other hand, for leadership, I see there are two very distinct and different sort of approaches. One are those leaders who have embraced the online working, who have embraced the remote work, the freelancing economy, working from home, while the others have just simply denied it. You cannot do this work, especially in areas where you have some sort of problems, and we can discuss that later, especially in areas where you have countries, developing countries like in South Asia, India and Pakistan. You're going to have a very different set of issues. I don't want to use the word, but countries that are highly patriarchal don't like people to be sitting around at home. So that is itself a challenge arises for women, for working women, for people having children. So it's quite a complex things that needs to be evaluated according to the geography, according to the industry. So IT sector, I think, would be a bit different than manufacturing or in the service sector. So it's a good idea for the leadership team to first evaluate what are the pros and cons. Can they go into remote working or not? This is an extremely important question for them. Does their geography, their employees, their culture allow it or not? Once they have the understanding, then they can start developing the strategies and the systems for that. Unless and until you develop a strategy, you cannot directly execute it, because something that is developed in the US, being taught in the US or in UK, cannot be implemented in Middle East or in Singapore, because it's a whole set of different people with different mindsets, with different culture. So for leadership, you need to be clear first and then take the decisions forward.
Yeah, I think totally agree with Khalil. Especially, I'm smiling because exactly on these geographies, I've seen the change, working and not working. And when Unilever wanted to bring in remote working, and this is way before the pandemic, 15-20 years back, people in UK were very happy. They didn't have to travel from the suburbs into crowded London and work. So they said, yeah, remote work. And then they said, let's roll it out across the world, across the countries where we are present. In Japan, it just didn't work. People said, we have really small houses. where would we put this strip of power strip? Where would we put our internet connectivity? Think ID, and Japanese, traditionally known to look for neatness, said this is not going to work. It worked, it didn't work. And specifically at that time, one of the areas where it didn't work was Pakistan. And where they said, especially the women employees said, we don't want to work from home. If we stay at home, our in-laws are asking us to make coffee and tea, and it's disrupting our work. We want to go to a place of work. Don't ask us to work from home. So really different things, the same thing. You can't take a concept like remote and just broad brush it and throw it across all geographies and expect it to work. I live in Hong Kong, and I know that the houses are limited by just the area where we work, and real estate is expensive, but we'd rather go to an office and work there than try cramming in all the devices at home with the kids and school and education and everything. And that's a big challenge. So really, while we want to say that in just in terms of a generic sentence, leading in the new world of work requires something more than the traditional approach. So it cannot be a traditional leadership practice. It needs a leader to be technologically savvy, flexible, inclusive, but also very attuned and tuned into the well-being of the team and where they are.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's really
also
some great points there.
yeah.
Add to that.
It also really comes down to the why. Why are we doing it? Why do we want to be hybrid or remote? Why do we want to allow people the flexibility and that leadership definition of why we're doing it and why it's important to the organization, whether it's talent acquisition and retention, or whether it is increasing diversity because we can get people from all over the world, but really getting crystal clear in articulating the why it's important to the organization, not just because everybody else is doing it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. And actually, that why has been a debate in my house. So my husband is an entrepreneur, okay, and he's running a food tech, logistics heavy company. I'm in technology. So for me to understand, and we both obviously live in the same house in the USA, but for me to say, well, remote work is a good thing as long as you have the right technology in place and the right, it's like, yeah, you can say all that. How do I cook my food remotely? How do I do my logistics remotely, right? So I think the why is critical. I think, Khalil, you also said that manufacturing and technology likely will have two different answers. So I like to think in terms of checks and balances. Like there is a company exists to eventually do something. And I'm a people person, like doing people analytics today. But in the end, there is a little bit of profitability we do have to find a way to get to, right? Otherwise, the companies will close down. So self-select yourself. If you need to stay at home, self-select yourself to do a job where working from home is conducive enough to becoming a high performer also. So, right, on one hand, the leaders have to be cognizant. To Saundri's point, you have to be in touch with reality, the cultural aspects of where you're working, where your workforce is, obviously the specific technology, the industry you are in, empathy with the employees you have in your team, what their needs are. I think the onus is pretty much at the top. Tone starts at the top. But for them to maintain the tone, even if you have the best leader in town and there's completely check, I'm in touch with everything, for them to stay in touch and do the right thing, it's only possible if every single employee is bringing to the table what they believe they're supposed to deliver, right? And I do see a lot of the times this tension builds up because the trust is missing. And I also see that the trust is strong, everything is beautiful. It's the opposite. Stay at home. No, I want to come and do the whiteboarding. No, like it's a beautiful world. But if you don't have checks, it becomes unfortunately not the right word. So I see technology as a pretty strong lever, and also cultural bonding, right? So meet periodically for sure, or have a heart-to-heart chat a couple of times, not a structured conversation all the time, but find ways to develop trust. We can go deeper in those conversations. Be really good in sometimes negotiation. A lot of the times trust breaks down because one of the two parties is not strong at negotiating, what I really need. But be very strong at fostering trust, and then have checks and balances, right? And again, I can go deeper into what I do, but analytics people analytics for people leaders, where they understand whom I'm hiring, for what skill I'm hiring, what I'm expecting, what are they delivering. That I think drives the company forward.
I just have a couple of things to add, and one is I agree with everyone on the panel and what they've said thus far. I do what Kristen said resonates with me as far as, you know, being the leadership being very, very clear about the why remote. That's going to be the driving force of in helping people to understand that remote work is important. The second piece is, and I think I heard Manisha say this in a different term, but the consistency and revisiting that why. A lot of times we make decisions on a specific initiatives, but we don't actually project manage the initiative. And so when you're talking about remote work, it's very important to revisit the reasonings why, seeing if things are working, and also just polling your employees. And that's the better way to understand if remote work is actually effective and productive and working, and revisiting those tools and practices and reshaping those for the best use within your organization.
Yeah, I agree 100% once again. So I think, what we've heard is that one size doesn't fit all. There's different organizations doing different things, different geographies. So I'm just curious now on adapting policies. So how have you seen organizations adapt their existing policies to accommodate this remote and flexible work environments? Can you share that or share some examples of your thoughts about that?
If I'll start and share what we've done here. Again, being a primarily remote first organization, so all of our policies are adapted with the employees in mind. So we don't create the policies in a vacuum. We have a committee and we ask our leaders about said policies and how that will help them or hinder them should we deploy them. So we get feedback and input on any of our policies where it impacts our employees. There are specific examples. So we have a big push on engagement, and a lot of our engagement can mean many things in many organizations. Some of our employees like the engaging, the social engaging. Some of our employees do not. So we have a number of practices or initiatives whereby our policies regarding engagement run the gamut of, we have social, we have in-person gatherings, we have community initiatives and practices that our employees actually helped us develop and made sure that we were in the right path. So, all in all, our practices and initiatives and policies are created with our employees in mind, but we gather lots of input from the team to ensure that we're creating those ones that are most effective for us.
Yeah, that's a really good way to do it. Wants to add on to that?
This panel is making my work very easy, so they're answering all the questions before I can. So I think it's a brilliant question, and Shay put it very eloquently. I think there are two sides to it. One is sometimes we need to understand that is it a new thing or is it just sugarcoating things when it comes to the policies and the strategy. Still in 2024, I hear the leaders and the HR come up with things like, let's suppose we are giving a new policy, you can work from home if you have become a new parent. So or if you have some sort of an issue, let's suppose these days tremendous rains in UAE. So sometimes the company try to justify, okay, there are rains outside, you don't need to come to the office. How can someone come with 2 or 3 feet of water, even if he tries to swim in? So when come to the organization, so these sort of things are the basic policies and the procedures, not something that is totally tied to the future of work or inclusivity and diversity that we are discussing. So we need to clarify these two things. One is the basic HR practices, what we just discussed. We need to strategize what the new world of work is, understand these things. I'll give you an example. The BPO industry, especially in the IT sector in Pakistan and India, is huge. And when I say huge, it is billions of dollars. So even a very small firm will have 500 to 600 employees with a monthly revenue of $4 or $5 million. So this is how big the design, the development, the logo design industry is in South Asia at the moment. When the pandemic came, one very serious issue arrived. So people were working from home. So what to do with the salespeople? They have this millions of dollars worth of business development and data, and there were some issues related to people who had some, question of values. So companies spend a lot of money on their digital marketing, on the PPC. They try to, bring in the clients. And when you give your data remotely without your checks and balances, how can you, manage that? I know it comes under a tremendous audit, needs to be done, but it is one of the technical challenges that, organizations face. So organizations need to understand that, first of all, that thing that we have discussed, the answer of why you want to go remote. Is it going to work for you or not? That's the first and the most important. Second thing is the culture. Are the people ready for it or not? If not, you need to first train and mentor your people. Okay, so what are the important? So one example that came was from Pakistan. I am from Pakistan. I understand one thing over here. If you give to majority of the people, okay, work from home, no one will wake up at 9. People will start their work from 12 or 1 p.m. It's not something that they don't want to do it. It's just a part of the overall national mentality and the culture that people are a bit laid back. Same is the thing that you will find in the Middle East. So you need to be considerate of the overall culture, overall personalities of the people, and then design a lot of things, plus technology and the use of data analytics. You utilize the data, check what is working for you, what is not working, and based on the data, make good sort of results. So I think there are two sides to it. But still, once again, to all the HR leaders, people listening, in 2024, parents leave, new birth leave, or inclement weather leave, you can work from home. This is not something related to future of work. These are the basic policies that needs to be in any organization.
Thanks.
If I can, if I can link it to, the conversations on companies which are doing well. So to just talk in examples in that sense, Aldi or Aldi, I'm not too sure how it is called. I think it's called differently. It's a grocery supermarket chain, ALDI, popular in Europe for sure, UK, very strong in UK. And they have amazing flexible work policies. And one of the things that, this always catches me, a lot of the times people say, oh, women look for flexibility and things like that. And one of the mythbuster things which came in the Women in the Workplace report by McKinsey is that flexibility is in the top 3 needs of both men and women. And I'm just saying, as men and women, there are other categories of people, but this report was catering to this distinction and bursting that myth. So Aldi offers that kind of work-life balance and flexibility for both men and women, any employee that they have in the organization, and even for roles like store managers. Now, some of the roles traditionally are assumed which will have less flexibility because of the person presence that the role calls for. So they have a couple of things. One they call as partnerships, key partnerships. So where once one of the store managers, he was halfway through an interviewing a position when he heard that his wife was going into labor. And they had these backup partnerships within the organization. His manager immediately took on the interview and he could leave to be where he had to be at that point of time. Similarly, for a lot of the, depending upon your work stage and life stage and all that, if you wanted flexibility for drop-offs, pickups and all that, and like Khalil said, we, even in 2024, some of these we can't take for granted, depending upon the organization that you work for and all that. So really having that buffet of benefits for you to pick up, it's like there are a lot of organizations in the US which do these wallet of benefits. So somebody might want a gym membership, and that's work-life balance for them. Somebody might want to leave early. Somebody might want some other flexibility. So really building in that and driving employee engagement through that for any kind of situation. And I know some organizations also do this. This is an organization called StratSig in the US. It's a startup. They do something called a stand-up time, which is 2 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. every day. There are 100+ team. They all meet and talk together in person. So whatever you do the rest of the day, remote, flexible, whatever, they try to find in that zone time to really connect and be part of the team. And while giving you the flexibility to work where you want, how you want, what time you start and end.
Right, you really brought up some good points, and I'll probably dive into some of that a bit later, particularly around the multi-generation, because we've got different generations in the workforce now, and they've got different ways of looking at things. And I've facilitated a number of panels on that sort of topic over the last few weeks, and yeah, I'd be really interested to talk about that. Now, one thing that was mentioned as well before was just really about employee engagement, and which is, you know, it's like research shows employee engagement really really enables results, enables innovation. And so I'm just wondering, in your experience, what sort of strategies have proven effective maintaining this high level of engagement that you really want to get and the productivity in the remote setting? What's some
I can start. I'll maybe I want to say one thing. Something that Shay said earlier. You know, the more you're in touch with people before you craft the policies, the better the yield, right? So we're dealing with human beings, not nuts and bolts like in supply chain, right? So, and each of us has a slightly different flavor to living, you know, and however we define what's good for us. So there's no shortcuts but to know your people. At the same time, having some guardrails on, Kali, to your comment earlier, I mean, Pakistan, India, US, wherever you go, if people can sleep a little longer, some of us will love to. I would love to. But if there's a meeting at 7 in the morning on my calendar, you know, and I'm integral about my job, I will show up, right? So I think having those guardrails of this is the time when we meet is important. But to your point of how we are keeping an eye, Rod, it's, I will say, I mean, again, analytics, I mean, there's a reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, but not intruding analytics, right? So first, I would say start with, are the right people in the right role, right? So if I am happy doing what I'm doing, nobody needs to tell me to do it. And if I just extrapolate it for everybody in my team, have I taken the measure to hire the person who is not just skilled enough to do the job, but excited to do it? And sometimes, I think a lot of the times we tend to hire people who can, you know, hit the work day one. But what if we hired somebody for him, this role is going to be a little bit of a growth curve, and they're passionate about that growth, right? So I'm here to coach you. You're 80% there. The 20% is going to be growth for you, but we will give you the right tools. We'll connect you with the right people. We'll, you know, we will align you with the responsibility which you want to take yourself. So a lot of it is, again, going to that granular level of the flexibility to not just have a, this is the job profile and everybody fits to it, but almost, you know, like a Lego puzzle. Every piece could be slightly different, but they all have to come together to form the right team. And the manager has a lot of onus in ensuring they understand each piece, the you know, the sharp edges and the soft edges of each of them, and then still bring it together. If you do that, and you have the policies which are giving that flexibility, and then the checks and balances, and the checks come a lot from analytics. You know, what is the delivery? So who's actually performing well? Who's collaborating well? Who's showing up to work in meetings? There's a lot of checks we can put, but you can put checks as long as the alignment is missing. You know, people will game the system. We're all pretty smart, right? So the only way of delivering performance is encouraging people to do what needs to be done, and make it their quest, not our request through them. I'll take a pause for now. Yeah, but very good question.
Very good answer as well. Thank you. You want to
I think
add on to that?
Yes, Manisha answered it very well. One thing I would like to add, engagement comes when you have the right set of culture and the right leadership team. So it's not just about the policies, procedures, mission, and values which are on your website or anything. So in a easy, simple terms for everyone listening, I think this is my personal recommendation and what I've learned over the years. There's a mistake that organization and leaders make. They try to fit every department under one policy. So even if it's your remote work policy, if it can be customized. So let's suppose if you are in an is sort of an industry where customer support is needed 24/7, so you can have a policy, different policy for customer support for work. But if let's suppose your HR is not that important for daily operations, you can have a separate policy for HR as well. So if you're trying to put one policy for everyone, it's not going to work out. So you can have a standardized overall organizational policy, but that can be trickled down for different business units and different departments and different geographic regions. So this is one of the most practical way of enhancing and adapting to the new world of work. Second thing, I think when it comes to understanding the employee engagement, the way you speak and the way you communicate is also very important. I use a term for it called cultural eloquence. You need to have understanding what sort of words and languages and tone you need to use while talking to people. So my tone and language can be different for Rod, but I have to be respectful when I talk to Manisha. Or let's suppose you cannot talk to women in the Middle East in a higher tone, or you cannot shake hands with them. So you need to be considerate of the culture as well. So understanding what the real culture is, what are the requirements, and then develop your policies accordingly. I know it's a bit of a technical thing, but with a bit of data analytics, talking out to people in the industry, reaching out to people what they are doing, can bring in some very good results.
Yeah, some really good points there as well. And I think the point you're making around, there are different groupings of different ways of whether it's geography, that there's different needs for different policies for the different groups. And just diving back into this life stage that was mentioned before, I'm just wondering, how do you consider, like, as one of those different groupings when you look at the intergenerational people in the workforce? Like, some people have joined the workforce when we've been fully remote and when we were fully remote with COVID, versus other people, like myself, my way of working has always been in the office primarily, and it's only just gone remote. So how do you consider that, and what's a way to deal with that in policies in particular?
I'll start by just saying, the engagement piece is still, is one of the main focus. We look at the employee's work on a spectrum. So we call it the employee experience. I'm sure everyone on this call has heard that. So we're looking at it from pre-hire to during the hiring to post, when we're offboarding. And we look at it in those terms because we create initiatives to help acclimate our new folks. And with our job openings, they know that they're coming into a primarily remote organization. But it's also important for us to help them acclimate to this environment. And we have a lot of touch points from, the first day on the job to performance management, rewarding, growth, training and development during their stay, I would say here, just to ensure that we're keeping abreast of what is important to the employee. I'll also bring in an item of people analytics. We're constantly looking at what is happening in our work environment and tailoring those programs accordingly. And we do have a multi-generational workforce. And I'll tell you that, our younger employees tell us, they tell us what they want. So it's easier for us to adapt our practices to incorporate some of the things that help us retain our different generations in the workforce. So, and I'll say from a practice perspective, it's important for us where we have geographically located a number of people, we ensure that we encourage and support from a company perspective that in-person meeting, because we do understand that, there's also loneliness in a remote environment. And we want to ensure that we try to address all of the diverse issues or concerns or matters that happen in the workforce. So we have a number of things that we deploy throughout an employee's journey with us, and we've actually decreased turnover with these number of initiatives.
Yeah, that
I
sounds
really
really good.
like.
Congratulations, Shay.
Yeah.
Seems
Yeah.
like a program well run.
Yeah, I really like the fact that it's end to end, almost like what Scott Galloway says, round the clock brand building for the organization. There's a pre-purchase stage, there's a purchase stage, and the post-purchase stage where you're really engaging and building that. And I think one of the things that is always a challenge is we have 5 generations working together in most workplaces. So how are we also in one way creating that opportunities for, say, the digitally savvy, and I don't want to again broad brush saying somebody is or not, but generally digitally savvy younger generation, create that kind of shadow board to help organizations move ahead. And I saw this in practice between Gucci and Prada. One of them used a shadow board of youngsters, helping them with their digital promotions. And that company was able to really go streets ahead in terms of access, whereas the other company was still working very traditionally and didn't have that shadow board. And so their digital outreach process really took a longer time coming on. The other part is also, how do you capture the knowledge that workforce has already? With exits from an organization, how do you really create a knowledge management program within an organization so you retain not just the talent, but also the knowledge of the talent who may be transitioning for various reasons? Some people may be retiring, some people may be moving out. How do you, and to that end, Shay, your point on, how do you have those great exit interviews where you're capturing some of these conversations? I think that de-aging part of the workforce is a really important conversation currently, and that is also building in the inclusiveness. Why is, I mean, in today's 100-year-old life, why is 60-year retirement age in some place? What happens after 60? Do you start becoming useless? So what really happens? And, so I think it's a great question and something for organizations and HR to really look at. How can we, other than of course the implications on Provident Fund and everything else and all the other financial matters that organizations need to take care of, how can we retain talent more meaningfully?
Yes, thanks. And that was really some good points. So I'm just going to move on to another question, and like some experience that I've had is people with concerns that when they're working more remote, that they mightn't have the same opportunities for advancement. So I'm just curious about, from your experience and thoughts about, how do we ensure the policies, the practices of our leaders, that they provide equal opportunity for career advancement for team members who are mainly working remotely? How do we get that right balance about advancing?
I personally don't think that is the case, and I might be myopic in my view, because we have been living in this like sort of the MNC world for the last 20 years. When I was in India, I was working with American companies. When I'm in America, I have India, Europe, Brazil, everywhere you're working, right? So So being visible doesn't necessarily mean you have to be in the same office anymore, but being visible definitely means you are performing at a level which becomes visible. Nothing. I think truth reveals itself. 2 years or 5 years, but you're doing smart work and hard work. You're delivering on whatever you've committed to deliver. You're also managing your teams. Sometimes, yeah, you have to manage up. Sometimes you have to ensure that you are visible to your managers. And I guess complacency probably, Rod, is the word that's coming to me right now as I'm speaking. If you are willing to take the initiative to really run your business the way you want to run your life the way you want to, there is enough opportunities to be visible today. And I'll just maybe remind Reid Hoffings, he has the founder of LinkedIn. I used to work at LinkedIn. He has the startup of you, right? So if you will run your life as if you are a company, you are the brand, you are the delivery, you are the growth engine. If you run it that way, I think remote or no remote, there's enough opportunities for everybody to become visible and seek the promotions. The only caveat likely is the culture. So we discussed, all along, the culture is set at the top. Leadership plays a key role. If you are doing everything and still you don't feel visible, heard, try a little, and then otherwise maybe switch, change the company, change the team. And there's enough examples of, I don't want to share it publicly here, but there's enough examples of people who are working under a manager 5 years. Every year there's a story of, do this and you'll get promoted. They move on to another team, and suddenly in 3 years, every single year they get promoted because they were so far behind and they're very high capable, right? So sometimes that happens, but first start with yourself.
No, I really like the point around being visible. So that may be a bit of a challenge in some organizations, is that you just get on and do your job and you're not visible about how you've got that achieved. And that's probably where also, I guess, maybe, and you've talked about analytics and other ways of getting information. How do you as a leader get the information you need to actually understand, if things are just getting done, and people are highly productive. They might not be visible because they just get it done. In the background.
And I'll just say this last thing. One of my very focused, passionate areas is to make silent heroes visible through people analytics. Because there's a lot of people who are, givers. I'll read books, so givers and takers. There's a lot of givers in the society. There's also some takers in the society. So sometimes you need a little nudge and a little help for the givers. And I'm hoping that that's one of the focus areas I have. How can analytics surface of high performers? How can analytics connect the dots with? And there's a lot we can do with the right data and analytics. I'll leave it there for now.
If I can add on to say that it's, if I can just add on to say that it's actually a lot of the onus, I feel, is on the leadership, even more so, at the risk of making this leader that one person who has to get everything right, without adding that. But I think, I remember Alex Altman, who used to be with, I think he's still with this media company called Wavemaker. So one of the things he really tried was to focus on, they have a value system called PASTE, where the D is for diversity. And he said he will always focus on it. He really worked on focusing on the D. When he had this London company meeting, introducing about the plan for the year ahead, he came and talked about it and said, I'm making a personal commitment on focusing on diversity. And then for the next 1 hour, he had 11 of his department heads come and make their presentation. And all 11 of them happened to be men who came and talked about the presentation. Though the company was very diverse, it had very good representation of men and women, it so happened that all the presentations were made by men. And that was a moment of pause for him to really brave the bias and acknowledge that as much as we put in all the effort, sometimes we are blind spotted. And he acknowledged that in that speech and said that, I don't know how I let 11 men get onto the stage to say that. And this is not a vendetta against men or women or anything, but to say that you focus on diversity and you're blind to some of the opportunities that you may be affording. There could be silent heroes, to Manisha's point, who are not front-ended, who are taking, who are taking a back-ended course. So even in a gender balanced workforce, sometimes the eye of the leader, what is the lens in which you are seeing some of these things, makes a difference. And that sends a signal. That's a cultural thing. That's what you're sending to the community. And it can be unintentional. Meeting rooms which are dominated by conversations which are dominated by a few. And it could be the silent minority, which is sometimes struggling. So I think the leadership onus on creating that kind of an inclusive culture for any of these aspects, for flexible policies, for inclusive policies, for noticing people when you're in remote situations, really seeing through your eyes, not just hearing through your ears. I think that's really important.
I just noticed we've only got 10 minutes left. That's amazing. We could talk about this for hours, I think. But I guess we can't really go through a conversation about remote work without talking about sort of technology. Just briefly, I'm just wondering if you just discuss like what sort of technology do you use in your working environments to help facilitate this sort of new work environment, and what do you see is really key in doing that?
I think one important thing is even the definition of technology and the medium of technology has changed. So few years ago, usage of WhatsApp was considered very rude when it comes to organizational communication, but nowadays it's a common thing. So doesn't matter if it's an email or a WhatsApp call or a Zoom, whatever you want to call it. Usage of technology and the right usage of technology that needs to be, in the inverted commas and quoted, the right use of technology is extremely important. Doesn't matter how good the technology and the system is, if your people are not trained, they don't have the answer of why we are doing it. If there are no policies in place, no training systems in place, it's not going to work out. I'll share an example. I was part of a consulting team that was trying to come up with a policy related to women at workplace and how they can be facilitated working from home. There were 7 people in the panel, and none of them were had any involvement of women in that. So all the guys were trying to come up with a policy. How can women be implemented? So that's a blunder. So if you're trying to bring in the technology, you also need to be smart. What sort of policies are you trying to create? And one last thing, there's a wonderful comment by an audience member, Melissa. She said transparency and open communication. So majority of the listeners, people will be from small medium enterprises. The leaders will be part of the SME sector. So MNCs, we all know they have the resources, they have the budgets to do a lot of research and access to great people. But for SMEs, you need to be, I think the basic thing, this is completely true, transparency and open communication. Try to be clear why you want to develop a policy, why you want to have a good technological system. And once you have the clarity, your things will get to improve.
The one thing I'll say about technology in an organization is don't have multiple mediums. When you have multiple mediums, it's very hard to centralize the organization around communication, around information. And so I 100% agree with what Khalil has stated, that you got to understand what you need and be very good and clear about that. And I'll just add, don't have too much because too much can be overwhelming and not lend you to getting the right information and the right communication to your groups of employees.
Yeah, I think that's perfect advice there, because you can end up having too many channels and the messages are coming, which channel do they come in? And you just don't find, it's very difficult to find and navigate the way you're communicating together with your teams. It's so true.
Yeah, I would say I have a framework. I mean, I live in technology, so ruthless in choosing the right tool. Simple is better, right? So, and sometimes we have again, we're Oracle, we can handle huge guns, but sometimes maybe you need to buy the NetSuite software, which is enough for your product, right? So you don't need Fusion. So choose the level of complexity that you need. Human beings have a fabulous tendency and capability to make simple things complex. So at least the technology starting point, keep it simple. Second, I would say to Khalil's point, train to make it work. And third is monitor usage and drive adoption as a program, right? So let's just say we are choosing Slack as a communication. I'm just saying, let's say that is an example, or even What If, right? From now on, What If WhatsApp is going to be our communication vehicle, and here are the policies. And then you monitor somebody or a group of people, like, I still see 3 text messages going, I still see 2 emails going, I don't see the right usage of Slack. You'll have to give some time to people to adopt it the right way. And like have a sticky point is a good way of thinking, is until that tool becomes sticky, it's just a tool that is not really delivering anything. So choose simple, train to make it work, and then monitor and drive adoption. That's like 1, 2, 3. And love yours, Shay. Don't have too many. Like enough.
Exactly.
Yes.
All right, we've got 5 minutes remaining, which is really sad to me, because I could keep talking. So just closing questions, and I'll just ask everyone to have a go at this. And there's sort of 2 questions. One is, what's sort of one key piece of advice you'd give to the other HR leaders that are listening to us today to help navigate the shift to a more flexible and inclusive workplace? And then also, just to add on to that, and again, quite briefly, what's sort of one key takeaway or insight that you've heard from the other panelists today that you'd like to, that you think to implement in your own organisation? So any orders, fine. Let's just have a go at that.
Yeah. If I can quote one of the CEOs, Alexi Seller, from, she's the CEO of Pollinate Energy. And she said that the future of work is going to be a cross-sector collaboration, not competition. And work is going to be an intricate dance across countries, time zones, cultures, languages, and new technologies. So finding creative ways to really connect and work towards a common goal will be what is driving the world of work. And for me, in this, the way the entire panel itself really brought in their personal perspectives from what they've seen work and not work, I think that's the biggest takeaway. And for me, it's if I think Kristen said this at the beginning, if that's what they choose to do. So really giving the agency to people, to employees, to own how they want to work and how they want to drive their outcomes. For me, that's been the key takeaway.
I think from my end, keep it simple. Don't try to overcomplicate things. Sometimes we try to come up with different complex models with different sub-steps, and it just doesn't work out. So as an HR or as a leader, try to keep things simple. Don't overcomplicate it. We are in the 4th industrial revolution, the automation and the AI era. In my views, the 5th industrial revolution is going to be, how can we collaborate the humans with the technology? So those people who have the right set of organizational psychology point of view, those who can link technology and the people together and combine together, those are going to be the winners. That requires customization. So last thing would be, as a recommendation, reach out to experts in the industry, upskill yourself, read as much researches and papers out there as possible. You're going to learn a lot of things. So talking to people can bring in a lot of new ideas related to your industry. So don't be shy, reach out to people and experts.
Great. Who wants to go next?
I'll go and just say that one piece of advice is, I think, echoing what everyone has said, is keep it simple, but be intentional. Be intentional about how moving to remote work is going to work for your organization, and solicit input and advice from leaders and employees alike, so that you get a variety of understanding of what needs to be done. And lastly, I take away the variety or the differences that has been shown from the other panelists, about working in a global organization. So it's not just determining what's going to be best for the country in which you work in, but you have to think a lot more globally, which requires more of a challenge in incorporating and being inclusive. That's something that I'm going to take away, although we don't have a global organization today, but thinking globally is a good way to improve and enhance the initiatives and practices that we have today. So thank you all.
Thank you.
I think everything good has been said. Maybe I'll try to summarize. We're dealing with humans. One thing doesn't fit all. So you have to understand human beings, right? I like to give that example. Supply chain is not the same as human capital management. Supply chain management is different. The H and the S, it's a big difference. So understand who are you working with, what policies are you creating for whom, and we all talked about differences, global differences, generational differences, digital maturity across generations. So a lot needs to be unfolded there. And I like the way you said it, Shay, intentional. The word I use is keep checks and balances. Intentionality is also about that. So you give a lot of flexibility after a thought through maturity at the leadership level, but then you also have to give incentives for all human beings to deliver and wake up at 9, no matter where you are for a meeting. So yeah, both sides of the can have to be taken care of.
I think everyone spoke. Well, I'd like to, I guess, thank all the panelists for the invaluable insights. It's really been a really engaging and insightful conversation today. I hope the audience has got some practical ideas, inspiration to help adapt your work policies to meet this new way of work. And so that's the end for today. And thank you once again, and look forward to seeing you in future panels. So thank you and bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.